All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call this committee session to order. We will be going over the Health and Human Services Department CIP this morning. If everybody at the dais could introduce themselves, and then we will turn this over to Ms. Yao to help walk us through the packet.
David Dice, Director, Montgomery County Department of General Services.
Nice tie, David.
Raymond Kroll, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. Good morning.
Good morning. Amanda Harris, Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness with the Department of Health and Human Services.
Good morning. Lindsay Lucas with OMB.
And Mary Beth with OMB.
Terrific. Ms. Yao, if you could give us a little bit of an overview and walk us through the packet, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So for fiscal year 21 to 26, the executive is recommending a total of $30.1 million for DHHS. It's an increase of $7.52 million from the amended fiscal year 19 to 24 program. The joint HHS and E&C committees reviewed 3 of the 4 recommended projects for the HHS CIP. Today, the HHS committee is going to review the remaining Progress Place project, as well as review the Avery Road Treatment Center project.
Great.
So for Progress Place, it's a new project which provides for the modification to the existing Progress Place building in Silver Spring. The total amount recommended for this project is $1 million. In GEO bonds, the requested appropriation in fiscal year 21 is $1 million. The project will renovate interior spaces of the building by upgrading fixtures, including toilets, sinks, and HVAC equipment. Interior finishes, including countertops, floor sealants, and walling, will be upgraded to support the intense use of the facility, as well as reduce ongoing maintenance costs. The project will also create a year-round outdoor space for clients. There's also an update on the funding that Council appropriated it for fiscal year 20 for improvements at Progress Place in terms of providing security staffing and other security supports to that building. That's in your packet on the second page. And basically, executive staff reports that all shifts have been filled for security staffing except one, and MCPD has begun the hiring process for that shift. In addition, HHS has funded approximately $100,000 in upgrades to the 3rd floor to expand the usable area and permit winter sheltering. So with that, Council staff recommends approving the PDF as recommended by the executive.
Great. Yep. Councilmember Glass.
Good morning. So, Progress Place. I've been a lot to Progress Place. I've visited many times in the last 12, 13 months. And this appropriation concerns me, not because of the need that I know Progress Place has, and the upgrades as outlined here, they're very, very important. But I think it speaks to a larger concern, or it does speak to a larger concern that I have, and that is the lack of anticipation for the usage and the need that this building opened in 2016, and yet here we are allocating another $1 million for deficiencies that were either not anticipated or problems that have arisen through the natural state of that facility in the last number of years. And so I'll direct my question to Director Dice. Why was the facility built in the manner that it was?
Well, happy to answer that. Let me start off with, I've compared this. I remember growing up, my father was in the Navy, and ships would go out for sea trials after they were built. Well, Progress Place has encountered a storm at sea over its first 3 years. I think while such a need exists, Progress Place has been very successful, but like a lot of other of our facilities, probably experienced a great deal more use than was anticipated. Progress Place has been used extensively. When it was originally designed in cooperation with our operators and partners, it was designed to what I would, for maybe less than an adequate comparison, call to a hotel standard. It should have been built to a much more industrial standard, and frankly, a great deal of what we're doing in this work is bringing it to that hotel standard. Under lessons learned, should we ever design and construct a facility like this or renovate an existing structure for this type of use, that's precisely what we would do. To be honest, over the last 3 years since it opened, over a little over 3 years, my facility staff has been in there doing so much work that doing this work will actually ultimately save the county money. We have been in there repairing and replacing sinks and toilets that were torn from walls, mirrors that were broken, sinks and showers that were clogged. This work will bring the building up to a hardened standard, if you will, that endures the great deal of use that it gets. In addition to this, there's also some other items being added for outdoor use, smoking areas and things of that sort. So there's a combination of expanding it to provide the level and types of services that weren't anticipated, but also bringing it up to a standard that should have been. Sort of as a direct answer to Councilmember Glass's question, again, we had never designed or built something like this. If you recall, this was built in conjunction with a private partner as a result of a land swap. And it was actually our partner that built it. We supervised the construction, but the design standards were a combination of inputs from the operators at the old Progress Place and our client departments. So everyone thought this is what we want. This is the humane. This is the right thing to do. We've gotten in there, and as Director Councilmember Albornoz would agree when he was a recreation director, people love our facilities to a greater extent than sometimes we anticipate. Progress Place has been used very heavily, and so we're now adapting it so that it can serve the uses that are now occurring there.
I appreciate that, and to continue your analogy of this facility being a ship at sea, it has taken on a lot of water, literally and figuratively, as you just described, particularly with the plumbing issues.
We would completely agree with that, and that's why we're going to fix it.
Are there any other, to digress a little bit, since this is a really important topic, are there any other facilities that are being built in the county through a similar structure, a P3 structure?
Of this type of service?
Not necessarily within the HHS realm, but because I'm using this as an important point.
Sure. Well, the other project on the dock at Avery Road is a partnership, and we've had others, and will in all likelihood have more facilities. The South County Recreation and Community Center is a public-private partnership, and future plans that we have in store for addressing the Goody shelter and alternate shelters that we're going to be doing. All of those facilities are being approached with lessons learned from Progress Place.
I appreciate that lessons learned acknowledgement. Before I wrap, so $1 million here, how much has already gone into Progress Place? The work that you were just alluding to that has been done over the last 3 years.
Oh, I would have to get maintenance records, and we can do that to answer your question. We keep tracks of all of the work orders that we've done, the additional work, repairs, and renovations that have already been performed. I'm happy to provide those.
Because my understanding is that remediation work on that facility started shortly after the building opened, once people started actually utilizing it.
Yes.
Right.
As soon as it was used, we began to realize that the facility was not up to the level of use and, frankly, abuse that it experienced.
So with the funds that have been used over the last 2 to 3 years, in addition to this $1 million, do you think it was a good deal?
Ultimate Progress Place? Oh, I think Progress Place, I'll defer to my colleague, Dr. Crowell, but I believe Progress Place serves a great need in the community and has been of benefit, certainly from the meals that are served there, I think most of the challenges we faced with the facility have been in the shelter and small units, dwelling units that are there, and that's where a lot of these corrections are being focused. But overall, I believe the endeavor has been a tremendous success. But again, I defer to the experts to my right to answer that question.
Let me just ask one follow-up to that. I understand the need for the facility. My question was about the finances of the building. All the money that the county has put in after it being constructed, would it have been better if we had just built it ourselves?
Oh, I don't believe the challenges faced by the structure are the result of the private partnership that we had, because it was built to the design standard and the program of requirements that the county had approved. So I don't believe that the result of the partnership caused a cheapening of any of the fixtures.
Fair word, yeah.
I believe that it was installed in accordance with the directions and specifications that the county ultimately bears the responsibility for having approved. And once again, I think the intentions were very honorable, but we were inexperienced in this sort of thing, and we're far more experienced now.
Thank you.
I'll just make one comment generally about capital projects, and I really appreciate Councilmember Glass's point. He's doing a fantastic job as our lead on these very critical issues that, you know, I've been in those rooms as you're having a debate and discussion and trying to keep a project in under a certain fiscal amount that's been appropriated, and those numbers are often moving targets. And in the previous administration, there was a constant struggle with the realities of our recession, while also trying to aggressively move forward a CIP plan to take advantage of the low construction costs at the time. But I think the bottom line is, and I know Mr. Dice agrees, that you have to build these right the first time. And dollars invested on the front end on projects like this, as opposed to nickel and diming, have an impact. And here we are, yet another example. And one of the first community centers that was built when I came on board, that was before we had the opportunity to weigh in, Caulfield Community Center, which is such a critical and important amenity, is yet another example of corners that should not have been cut during the development and construction of that particular project. And as a result of those corners being cut, literally millions of dollars having to be invested from a maintenance perspective and now a capital perspective to right what shouldn't have been wrong in the first place. So I'm a big proponent of making sure it's built right the first time, and that's the lens from which I will be looking at capital projects while I'm on this dais to make sure that we don't have these issues. But
if I may respond to that, I agree. And Councilmember Albornoz, when he was on the executive side, understands, and I agree with your assessment. When we, the euphemistic term is value engineer a project, what we try and do, because this is at a necessity, because we have X amount of dollars to spread across a very ambitious capital improvement program that includes schools, and so these are hard decisions to make. So when we do have to make those decisions, we try and make them in areas where, if determined necessary later, we can come back and do things without resulting in an overall lowering of the quality of what we do. For instance, in this work anticipated in progress place, we have eliminated an emergency generator that would be a 24/7 generator because it's over $500,000. There's still a generator, a life safety generator that's already there that allows people to escape the building in the event of a disaster, but it doesn't operate at 24/7 if power is lost to the Silver Spring area. We can always come back and do that, but I'd rather take a larger significant cost component that I could come back and do it another time than to take a degradation in the quality across the board. I think that's imprudent and a poor use of public funds.
Councilmember Rice.
So I'm a little bit perplexed because you said, Mr. Dice, that this was a project of ours, but I thought that the deal was that as a part of the land swap, that the landowners actually had the responsibility to build the building.
That's correct. They did build it, but they built it to a standard and a design that the county had approved.
Was there a budget limitation associated with that standard and its design?
Well, there certainly was a financial arrangement and a cap on the value that they would contribute. But again, the design, back at that point, there was no talking about, well, let's not use stainless steel fixtures, let's use porcelain wall-hung fixtures. That was simply the design. There was no cheapening, to go back to that term.
How far were we away from what the cap was in terms of what the expenditures that they made versus the cap were?
I'd have to go back and check.
I'd like to have that information because I personally feel, based on tax dollars, that if there was a difference between, and then we found that there was actually some deficiencies and they didn't build something to spec, we've been down this road before. The only reason why this raised hairs on my neck is because we've been down this road before, having a partner who's building something for us and doesn't build it the appropriate way, and then we have to have remediation. So this sounds awfully familiar from my perspective. So again, and I'm not saying that it is the case, I'm just saying that I know that from a financial perspective, if a person can get away with doing something cheaper, just because you say that, yeah, this is the design I want, and they say, yeah, but we can do this instead of this, and can save some money that saves money out of their pocket, they're going to do it. They're in business. That's what they do. And so from that perspective, it's not the same as the county. And that's why I do agree with what Councilmember Glass was saying. It's not as though the county, who has a larger responsibility to the constituency to make sure that this is exactly what we want and is going to give us what we want from a longevity perspective, their primary focus is to build it, get in, and get out. That's what they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what they do. That's what they're in business for. I'm not, saying that that's a bad thing, but understanding that, I just think that we should take a look at this in the context of how much was this cap versus how much did they actually expend, and look at then this $1 million that we're outlaying and see if there's not some conversation that we should be having with folks about, hey, maybe you did do some stuff that you could have done better. You were already under the cap, which would save our taxpayers money. Because at the end of the day, there's no question it has to get done because we have to do it right. And so thank you for doing it right and coming in and making the changes that are necessary. I'm just concerned about who should be paying for it.
I appreciate that, and we can get you that information. I don't believe that there was any gap funds left over at the end of the day. And as with every project we do, experience some value engineering. But I can sit here and tell you that the types of problems that we've had in maintaining and servicing and keeping that facility operational were the result of designs. Again, we didn't anticipate that sinks would be torn off of walls and toilets ripped out from floors and drawers filled with water to be used as ashtrays. No one expected that type of use, and so we've gotten them much better. But we can still get back to you on how the finances washed out in the project.
I would just assert that I know that while those are some of the changes that we're making, those aren't the only changes that we're making, and some of them are actually just based on the equipment and the things itself that, there is some abuse that certainly is there of the facility, but there are also things that are beyond the abuse.
Certainly, some of this should have been more industrial grade stuff.
Exactly.
No doubt.
So, and then also just to carry this in the line of questioning that Councilmember Glass was talking about. So as we look towards Taft, as we look towards what we're going to do there in terms of a temporary structure, I think we need to use this as a guidance for us, really when it comes to what we're doing in partnership with MCCH, and use this as a learning lesson for us. So
agree.
Absolutely what we've done up to this point, we need to reevaluate and take a look at this to make sure that we're encompassing all of those kinds of changes in terms of what we're going to be doing for there. So I would just ask.
We have had, in fact, those conversations with our HHS clients.
I appreciate that. And I very much agree with both council members Royce and Glass that, the time when you've got leverage is when these public-private partnerships as the development is happening. So I think obviously, the lessons learned will be critically important moving forward because this council is very committed to pursuing the aggressive stance to end homelessness in our community. And a lot of that will relate specifically back to housing. So having those standards is critical. Dr. Crowell, did you have anything you wanted to add to this conversation?
Just two pieces, and it's just generally about both of these projects. One of them, obviously, these are facilities that are in heavy use, and I think heavier use than certainly Progress Place is in heavier use than any of us anticipated, and the use has morphed over time, and I expect that it will continue to do so as we try to address this issue of homelessness and housing for our residents. I think the Avery Road Treatment Center process is probably a study in lessons learned and applying lessons learned. That from the fact that we installed the generator up front that we knew would take care of the campus of Avery Road, and that was one of the things that we had to discuss, but I think it gives us capacity and protects that program, to the fact that we have continuous oversight with DGS and HHS and the provider as we go through, and the builder as we go through this process of making decisions about what goes in the facility. So I'm thinking that the conversation we just had, that you all just had about the ship, I think this is a ship that is being built in dry dock and hopefully being built correctly in dry dock. I'm under no illusions that we will get it 100% right, but I think what we're doing with Avery Road Treatment Center is a good space. So that's my comment for the day. I think if you have detailed questions about Progress Place and we can come back and answer those as you ask them. So thank you.
Okay, Ms. Yao.
Okay, moving on to Avery Road Treatment Center. The executive did not recommend changes to the fiscal year 19 to 24 PDF for the facility, as it anticipated the construction would be completed in fiscal year 20. So basically, the totals for that project remain the same, and amounts under that project have been fully appropriated. However, as far as the schedule goes, the project construction is in progress, and completion and opening are anticipated by the end of the calendar year 2020. As a result, because this latest schedule for the project shows construction going into fiscal year 21, council staff recommends, adjusting the PDF to reflect that, and so that it's an ongoing project into the fiscal year 21 to 26 CIP, and then make a corresponding slippage adjustment. The exact amounts of what's going to be spent in 21, that information wasn't available when we published the packet, so if the executive could provide that, we can provide an updated PDF.
Mr. Dice, or
Sure, just to give you an update on where we're at, this is hot off the press from about a half an hour ago. The project is about 35% complete. Second and third floor slabs have been poured. Roof trusses are installed next month. And the project, because of weather and construction delays, is running about 60 days behind. That puts us at substantial completion probably in August or early September, with an opening in early fall. Other than that, in typical construction-related delays, the project's going quite well, and working with our private partner, a nonprofit, has proven very successful, and I think everyone's going to be very pleased with the results that we get from that.
Councilmember Glass.
So picking up on the good conversation we just had on Progress Place, and Director Dice, you saying that lessons have been learned, and you particularly mentioned such lessons being learned with this project, Avery Road. Can you elaborate a little bit as to what those lessons are and how they're being applied?
Sure. This is, of course, not the exact same type of facility, but we're going to apply lessons not only from Progress Place, but also from the facility that this facility replaced, which the first time I visited and heard complaints about the manner that it was constructed, because it was temporary structures, and the county has had in the past the tendency to make permanent out of temporary structures. So when I went in and tested the floors, my foot in fact went through the floor. And I said, well, we ought not to do this again. So this is a relatively, from a construction standpoint, a relatively simple structure. It's steel frame, poured concrete floors, and the structure itself is, as I said, more substantial. The restroom and lab wet space facilities will be more durable. This is being built to a laboratory standard, and so this is not like a temporary field hospital standard. So I don't have specifics for you as to types of equipment, but the restroom facilities, the laboratory wet space facilities are being designed to be very durable and withstand what we expect to be significant use. Again, these are the types of facilities that you really hate to build them because of but they have a need. And this particular facility is going to be significantly larger than the one it replaced, with more beds, operated by our private sector nonprofit partner. So we anticipate that it will be more heavily used than what we experienced before, and so we've designed it for that. And I can give you some specifics if you'd like them.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So there's a lot of information that we'll be getting from you,
You bet.
After this conversation. But just to drill down a little bit more, trying to understand the relationship with Potomac Healthcare Foundation, right, who's building this facility, the lessons learned in this instance, it sounds to me like it is requiring higher grade infrastructure, or is it a different type of relationship through the process? Just elaborate a little bit more about what those requests are.
Sure. Of course, Potomac Healthcare comes having done this work successfully elsewhere, and that was a key factor in that they have had experience, and so we relied, frankly, as we did at Progress Place, and with an awful lot of input on the service provider. But the fact that they have actually operated in similar type spaces as this, we think that their experience was very beneficial. But so, as I said, it's built to a higher standard as far as healthcare facilities are concerned. It's not a hospital. But it is a facility that's going to have beds for stays for the clients that are treated. It's going to have examination spaces. It's going to have treatment and clinical type spaces, again, as differentiated from hospitals. But and Potomac Healthcare will be operating the facility and will be responsible for the care and maintenance of the facility that they operate. So they have a vested interest as well in making sure that it is durable, since they would bear the costs if it proves not to be.
And that was going to be my final question. If after they move into the facility and there are deficiencies that are found, who's on the hook for them?
They are.
Good answer.
Just a quick comment about that. One of the things about this facility is that Potomac Health Foundation, the facility and the program are JCO accredited, Joint Commission for the Accreditation of Hospitals. So they have to meet certain standards in both in terms of clinical programming, but also in terms of the facility and the space. So those standards are being baked into the design as well, and they will continue to be on the hook for maintaining it and keeping up that accreditation.
A lesson learned, by the way.
Key lesson.
Great. I see no other lights regarding this matter. Was there anything else, Ms. Young?
That's it.
Okay, so that's it for now. That closes our work session on the CIP. Thank you very much.